I'm from the Baha'i community. It would be really unfair to quote a very important quotation from my own faith tradition before going to the panels. You know, it will summarize, this particular quote summarizes the whole idea of these two-day gatherings. The purpose of religion, as revealed from the heavens of God's holy will, is to establish unity and concord amongst the people of the world. Make it not the cause of dissension and strife. The religion of God and His divine law are the most potent instruments and the surest of all means for the dawning of the light of unity amongst men. The progress of the world, the development of nations, the tranquility of peoples, and the peace of all who dwell on earth are among the principles and ordinances of God. This is a quote from the Baha'i writings. So it ties with the topics that we're going to discuss now. It's about interreligious tolerance for peaceful coexistence. So I will give the first chance to Dr. Karima. I have been to UAE. In fact, the most important event which I have attended in UAE is the World Tolerance Summit. I know that event was very successful. So please give us your experience from UAE.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Today I'll be discussing lessons learned from UAE experience in tolerance and coexistence. Before I start, allow me to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude for the commendable initiative organizing this conference by uniting leaders from Ministry of Peace, from religious councils, from many other organizations, which sends a very strong message of our belief in tolerance and coexistence. The Ministry of Peace today and the Religious Council are fostering a valuable platform for sharing a pathway for peaceful coexistence. I commend Ethiopia's ministry and the Religious Council for their dedication for the value of tolerance and coexistence and peace, which actually aligns and resonates with UAE vision. Why lessons from UAE and why UAE in this narrative today? UAE is a house for millions of more than 200 nationalities who freely practice their faiths with dignity, which means we have places of worship, including more than 50 churches, 2 Hindu temples, a Sikh Gurdwara, a Buddhist temple, exemplifies this inclusive ethos. Additionally, we have the Abrahamic family house, which encompasses a mosque, church, and a synagogue, which actually send a very strong message of a powerful interfaith dialogue that UAE believes in as a commitment to fostering an understanding. When it comes to lesson number 1, to go ahead with approaching tolerance and coexistence, you have to have a comprehensive vision. The UAE has developed a comprehensive, a forward-thinking vision of tolerance and coexistence. The one not only celebrates diversity, but strategically anchors at its vital element of national stability and progress. The UAE exemplifies how peace, security, and mutual respect are the foundation of prosperous society. We found out that if you want any strategy to be successful, it has to be backed by laws and policies. And this is what UAE is translating into projects. Lesson number 2, we have to stop talking about tolerance and move it from a core value into a strategic pillar. Leadership of the UAE has recognized that tolerance is a core national and security strategy critical to a sustainable development. You cannot sustain any development if there is no tolerance and coexistence amongst all the nationalities, the races living on one country. It started by establishing a body in 2016 called Ministry of Tolerance, which was a decisive move for the United Arab Emirates. The ministry promotes coexistence and respect for diversity while actively addressing extremism through both awareness and preventive measures. To reinforce that and to go back to the comprehensive framework, it launched the Anti-Discrimination and Hatred Law. That law criminalizes hate speech and discrimination, establishing a legal foundation to counter intolerance and safeguard freedom for all residents. The law protects against any discrimination in religion, race, or gender, guaranteeing individuals the right to practice their faith with dignity. Lesson number 3, having a framework for sustainable diversity. We start with many initiatives in the United Arab Emirates that actually anchors the United Arab Emirates as a hub of tolerance and coexistence. Again, in 2019, the National Tolerance Program was launched. That program has many clear objectives to promote religious freedom and support culture of coexistence through 6 pillars: governmental, family, community, workplace, and educational tolerance. So everywhere you go, the framework will back you up. Alongside promoting tolerance as a global principle, these pillars lay a strategic framework to ensure lasting social harmony is transforming tolerance into a project, into something that is seen and touched everywhere you go in the United Arab Emirates. It's not something that we say in conferences, but you can touch it in projects and KPIs. Lesson number 4, have some symbol that actually represents your vision of tolerance and coexistence, which was the Abrahamic family house. The Abrahamic family house symbolizes the unity. It's not only a house that brings the 3 religions together, but actually it sends a very strong message, stand as a space for interfaith dialogue. And this is what my colleagues mentioned, that everything starts with a dialogue and mutual respect. This project aligns with UAE's broader vision to serve as a global platform for diverse faiths to connect, share perspectives, and strengthen bonds and understanding. And then, when you are ready, let's move to lesson number 5, which is moving the peace to be a global unity. The UAE actively promotes peace not only in the United Arab Emirates. We are here today, and we are with our friends, brothers, and other countries, contributing. The UAE contributed more than $6 billion to all peace initiatives and humanitarian aid supporting stability of these countries through projects facing conflicts, assistance with spanning education, healthcare, infrastructure as part of UAE's strategy to promote peace and shared global values. In addition, establishing some centers internally and externally to help youth always find their way back to the country and feel safe. The UAE established both Hidayah and Sawab centers. These initiatives underscore the UAE commitment to addressing extremism with innovative, comprehensive strategies, both online and physical. In addition to that, in 2023, the UAE co-sponsored a UN Security Council resolution with the United Kingdom condemning hate speech and violence, urging to prevent extremism and foster tolerance. And I would like to conclude with lesson 6, which actually resonates with Ethiopian vision and the launch of declaration today or tomorrow. In 2019, the UAE designated a compass as a symbol of global unity, which was a year of tolerance. So 2019 was a year of tolerance for the United Arab Emirates, affirming and sending another strong message, the commitment of the country to nurturing tolerance locally and globally. During that year, a very important event happened. That year, His Holiness, the Pope Francis, and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Dr. Al-Tayyib, signed the document of a human fraternity of world peace and living together, calling for the rejection of extremism and promoting coexistence, which actually very similar to what's going to happen today and tomorrow in Ethiopia. This document is a testament of UAE's message to the world and Ethiopia's message to the world, urging other nations to learn from the lessons. So today, Ethiopia is opening a totally new page, sending a very strong message and setting an anchor itself as a new hub of nurturing tolerance and coexistence. In closing, I extend my deepest appreciation to Ministry of Peace, my friends here, and the Religious Council in Ethiopia in strengthening our ties and shared dedication to building peace between UAE and Ethiopia. Through this gathering, I underscore the need for all nations to adopt what Ethiopia is embarking upon today, a strategic vision for advancing tolerance and coexistence, like UAE and Ethiopia, ensuring dignity for all. The conference today represents more than exchanging of ideas. It unites our efforts, empowering us to create a better world and a future for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Karima. That's wonderful. So one important lesson we should take for Ethiopia and other countries, that we need to put those words, high values, into strategies, laws, policies, and of course to sustain the dialogue and action. It's very important that we do that. That's what we learned from UAE, because I have been witnessing this for the last few years. Thank you. My friend, Mr. Abdurrahman, your experience from the Intelligence Council of Kenya. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my distinguished moderator. My name, as has been said, is Abdurrahman Ismail, and I come from Kenya, which is a neighbor to Ethiopia. I'm always happy to be in Addis Ababa, which is the cradle. Ethiopia is the cradle of mankind. But like has been said this morning during the various presentations, Ethiopia is set itself apart from other nations in many ways. And one of the most important ways that it sets itself apart is its history as the protector and provider of sanctuary to people who have been persecuted, people facing religious persecutions. It was the first place where Muslims running from the Middle East, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sent his people here. And I think that was overemphasized. Let me talk about Kenya now. I represent and pitch here to explain the experiences of Kenya with respect to a number of things. The Interreligious Council of Kenya, just like the one in Ethiopia, is at the forefront of, beyond other things, ensuring that we have a harmonious and peaceful coexistence and relationship between all people of all faiths. One might ask, what is the business of having an interreligious outfit or an agenda? What would be its agenda? Why? Because this question, silly as it may seem, has been asked to me. Oh, we knew you as an economist, as a diplomat, and what's this business of religion? I didn't know you are also a sheikh. But, you know, that is taking it out of context. I am there not to preach or to advance any specific faith tradition. Rather, I am working with the Interreligious Council as a religious actor who promotes inter-religious cooperation. And why? First of all, we are all human. In the Quran, for instance, and speaking as a Muslim this time, there are catchphrases that starts every verses of the Quran. And a number of times the Quran calling, when the Almighty God is invoking and calling upon people, there are 3 different ways in which He does that. One of them is by saying, Ya ayyuhal mu'minun, O you who believe, O you believers, or people of faith. The other one is Ya ayyuhal muslimun, you Muslims. But if you look at the number of times, several hundred times, the word Ya ayyuhan nas, O humanity, O human beings. That tells you, if someone uses one phrase to make up their statements several hundred times, that tells you the importance with which he attaches to that specific thing that he's speaking about. So humanity, we are human beings, and we have a common heritage as human beings. We also share common spaces. We go to the same schools, we share the same hospitals, we share, different things. We share water, we share everything that we need as human beings. Those are some of the common things that we share. But we also have common aspirations. We want to live in peace. We want peaceful elections, for example, in our countries. We want peaceful and credible elections that are free and fair and transparent. We would like a society that is governed with integrity, good leadership. That is the aspiration of all of us. But we also have some common challenges, contemporary ones, and some that are specific to our nation states. But let me speak about the contemporary ones. For example, we have pandemics, we have sicknesses. Recently we had, not so long ago, we had COVID pandemic. And religious leaders came to the aid of the nation state of Kenya because we had vaccines, they were expiring. People had all sorts of myths and misconceptions and misinformation about the vaccine. And religious leaders provided guidance, took the jab in public, and therefore people began to listen to them because of the trust of religious leaders. Kenya also, speaking about the role of religious leaders, is a country that, like many African or developing countries, particularly African countries, has had checkered and meandering history in terms of its constitutionalism and political and democratic governance. All our elections are moments of tension, particularly at the presidential level. In 2002, and I say checkered because we've also had very good elections. In 2002, we had the best elections that we have ever had as a nation state. In the Time magazine headlines, in 2002, we changed a government that was in power for 40-something years, and one president who had been there 24 years, that is Daniel Arap Moi. We were named on the cover page of the Time magazine as the most optimistic people on earth. So we have had good elections, but just one. The rest of our elections have been hogwash. In 2007, we had an election which was disputed and led to a large conflict with over 1,000 deaths in our nation state. Our leaders, current president and immediate former president, were taken to The Hague and indicted for, gross violations against humanity. We had very many IDP camps, very many people displaced, sexual violations, very many bad things. In 2017, we again broke the record as a nation where the presidential election was not nullified. It was called void, null and void, and not meeting the good standards for an elections. So you can imagine all these troubles that we have had. Even in most recent elections after that in 2002, and that's where I'm going to end my submission, we had a challenge. But what did we do as the religious fraternity, given that the religious community of across faiths are the people who are most trusted? Several actions. This was an election where you have one government, because government is ideally one. If you have a president and a deputy president, and this morning we had the president of the Federal Republic, Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and the minister is still here with us. It's one government, and we had a situation where the same government was competing against each other, with the president, the incumbent then, supporting an opposition candidate, and now the deputy president then, who's now president, was becoming. So tensions were quite high. And government then tried every trick in the book to stop the current from assuming office and from winning an election. It was a very dangerous moment. What did the religious leaders do? Several things, as I conclude. Number one, we invoked and returned the country to the Almighty God. Prayers across the nation. We have never had a prayerful event in Kenya other than for that election. Of course, Kenya is a prayerful nation. But that every household, everyone was on his or her knees praying for peaceful elections, for peace. The second thing that we did was talk to all the actors and get our citizens to believe in the institutions that manage the electoral process, the Electoral Commission, the security, the judiciary, and ask everybody who gets aggrieved. Because in an election, there is always a winner and a loser. And sometimes, genuinely, some people may have reasons to petition. But we told them, don't go to the streets, don't use violent means, use peaceful means. We gave the support to these institutions. Incidentally, no incident at all. Across the country, even ordinary crimes. The Minister for Security, when reporting crime during the electoral week, there were only 2 misbehaviors in which there were incidents. And these were done by two MPs in different parts of the country. The rest of the country, not even common crimes. So, that's what we did. But that's not enough. When the elections were over and the results were announced, you had this bad blood between the opposition leader, who was an iconic leader, lost 5 times, this time with a state, with him, and he still lost to someone who's running for the first time. And then you had the former president who did not like this guy, and he has to hand over power to him. It was a very tense moment. And therefore, what did we need to do? Get religious leaders to do pastoral care and shuttle diplomacy. Go to the former prime minister, pray with him and his family. Go to the current president, who was then the winner at then. Tell him to tamper his success and win. Because there are many people who are hurt. Half the country did not vote for him. And then we had to tell the other one, pray with him too, and tell him that this country is bigger. You need to ensure a smooth and peaceful transition. Immediately after the elections and all that was finished, the opposition started again what we in Kenya call demonstrations over the economy and many other things, but basically attached to grievances from the elections. And because we couldn't convince them again, we had to, as religious leaders in Kenya, bring in external mediators and guarantors. I traveled with my chairman of the Interreligious Council to Abeokuta, which is the home of former President Obasanjo, and plead with him, please come and talk to these guys. And he came, and we got something called a mediated settlement. That's why former Prime Minister is now going to contest for the AU, and he's part of government. And so each time we have had to deploy certain strategies to ensure that there is peace. Because as they say, boys will always be boys, but particularly in Kenya, elections will always be troublesome elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul. Thank you so much. Yeah, Kenya, is the most right now, the most peaceful person. I mean, I have been there a number of times. I have never come across any talk about the clashes between the religions or inter-religious violence. So, yeah, it's really, there are so much to learn from Kenya, a neighboring country, as a beacon of peace and harmony. And also the Inter-Religious Council is very vocal in the space, political space of the country. Thank you, Mr. Abdulrahman, again. Next now, my friend Rabbi Friedman. He's from South Africa. Probably you will also give us something about South Africa and also probably from your faith perspective. Thank you.
It would be a shock if the speaker kept to the topic from the program director. Sawubona, shalom. I greet you in two ways. One, a greeting from South Africa, and one also a greeting of my faith, and to our fellow faith-based leaders and excellencies and all protocols observed. You know, it's already the first day of the conference, and I must say, as a delegate, I feel that so much has already been achieved. Yes, of course, the hard work is ahead of us, and as a rabbi, a type of preacher, minister, homiletically speaking, please allow me to say the following. We are in the highest capital in Africa. I'm actually still catching my breath. I don't know if anyone else who's flown in has this experience. But perhaps this height is also for something that we need to raise our level of morality to as we come to respect one another and forge together in this interfaith dialogue. So many friendships already on day one have been made, and already so many candid conversations have been had, which personally I found very encouraging. And you'll see my name on the program today, but it would be remiss of me as a representative of South African Religions for Peace to not recognize my sisters, Tahira and Purity, especially Sister Tahira, who has been a long-standing member of Religions for Peace for many, many, many years. And our delegation from South Africa, with 2 extra women, I think shows the diversity and the tolerance that we bring to this. And I would encourage everyone, can we give the ladies a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. I would encourage everyone, if you can, there's so much to say, and we had hoped that they would share on this panel as well, to please engage with the full delegate of South Africa at meal times and else that goes by. I was privileged at a young age to be thrown into the interfaith space. And since then, I've been trying to build relationships. When someone says to me, what creates success in interfaith work? It's about if you know someone in another faith, are you able to speak to that person? We can talk and compare scriptures, and we can have dialogue. But do we know the person? Do we have a relationship to the name behind the business cards? And from the struggle days of the apartheid regime in South Africa to the Rainbow Nation, religious leaders, and I must add, Religions for Peace South Africa is the oldest interreligious council that we have, representative here at this very auspicious summit. Religious leaders have been at grassroots level and at leadership level as well, creating peace through direct engagements as well as through prayer and through action. It's very easy for us to sit and to talk, but to get out of our offices and to get down in the mud and to go and build and to see the suffering of the people, to see what's happening. This has been where religious leaders, I believe, have made the biggest impact in the mud at grassroots levels. And this, again, I must congratulate and commend my sisters, because this is where they can be found. You won't find them in an office. You will find them out in the fields, making a big difference. As South African religious leaders, when there is a crisis, we come together. As South African religious leaders, when there is a call for social action, we come together. As South African religious leaders, when there is religious work to be done, we come together. And when there is a celebration, as South African religious leaders, we also come together. It's very easy to react, but we must remember that we have friendships as well. And people often will be shocked to see the people that we talk to. Now, a lesson I learned in my early days, training to be a rabbi, a minister, was that when you are the last speaker, before a meal. It's very important to keep it short. So I will begin my closing, and I will leave you with 12 anecdotes, which I hope will display religious tolerance in South Africa. Number one, the local police in South Africa have created a spiritual leaders advisory committee. It is a constructive committee. It's not reactive. The police are engaging with religious leaders before things happen, so that if, God forbid, something happens, they can call on the religious leaders to engage with their communities. So much crime and hate can be prevented if we engage in it early on. A few years ago, in KwaZulu-Natal, the province that I'm from, there were some great floods. The Almighty sent down torrential rains, and many homes were washed away, and lives were lost. I am a Jewish rabbi. I went with the Council of Churches and Baha'i and Hindu and many other faith groups on a solidarity visit. And from then, aid stations were set up. It was an interfaith delegation from the onset. There was never a question of one religious group doing more than the other. Everyone banded together to try and make a difference. In fact, it was because of the church in our area that we had access to certain communities. Another example. A few months ago, we had no water in South Africa. Can you believe that? Where was the local distribution points? In my community, at the local masjid, the local mosque. Jews, Christians, Hindus, everyone was going to the local mosque to collect their water. It's that simple. It's that obvious. Many years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, sadly, there was a type of crime, a terrorist attack at one of the local masjids as well, a mosque. And we led an interfaith delegation on a solidarity visit. Can you imagine when a community is in crisis and all different faiths ministers can go to visit together? Where I come from in South Africa, this is normal. This is what's expected. People stand together through thick and through thin. And I suppose I can say that when I speak to someone, they're usually shocked that a rabbi has spoken to the Catholic cardinal that week. When I see someone from a particular church, I say, I saw your pastor and I spoke to him. Or I was visiting the office of that Hindu temple recently. And even I can say, I have the sheikh of my area or the muwala down the road, his phone number. How can it be? And often we're on first name basis, like we said in the previous panel. But personally, I prefer to use titles, at least in public, to show the tolerance, to show the respect for that faith. It's very important.